Hey there, you're listening to Not Another TV Podcast. This is episode 67, the week of December 7th, 2024. My name's Drew Koenig. With me, as always, is my co-host, Mads Sassy. Mads, how we doing?
Hey, how's it going? I'm alive. Which is not something we can say for the United Healthcare CEO.
But,
But
if you saw something, no, you didn't.
I have so many friends that are like native to New York City, and so they're like, I appreciate how badly the NYPD is fumbling this investigation. So badly. They're like, what do you mean it took them 3 days to find his backpack that was literally feet from the location of the shooting? What do you mean he escaped on a bike and you didn't catch him?
Listen, let this be a lesson to people. Never allow yourself to be so hated that an entire city full of people will say, I didn't see none.
My mom tried to show a little compassion for the situation, and she's like, she's like, I don't think he had much say in the day to day. I was like, are you kidding me? He's the CEO. He created all the policies. I was like, that's what people are upset about. The policies that
Yes.
then create the problems in the day to day. I was like, there's no sympathy for this man.
No. Anyways.
Don't go murdering people, though. We do not encourage murder.
Indeed. Speaking of which, I would like to talk about an email I received. I meant to mention last week, but I would like to talk about very, very briefly here. So an email was sent to our podcast email, unprompted, and I do want you know about this email already. And there's certain things that I need to know and don't need to know. As a person who runs this podcast, some things I really need to know, some things I really don't need to know. But I received an email from an anonymous individual, entitled "Not Another TV Podcast is ranking very well in Israel,"
Yeah.
and it goes on to say, "Hello, how's it going? Strong start. Hope all is well. So far, so good. I have some cool information that might interest you. This reader was not true. That was the lie." But they go on to say, your podcast, Not Another TV Podcast, has good performance in Apple Podcast rankings in the last 30 days. And the implied threat here is in Israel. It says, we are position 21 in the category TV reviews in Israel. Position 192 in the category TV reviews in Australia. They put Australia, hang on, never mind. And position 194 in the category TV and film in Israel. I don't know whether to believe this or not. I don't know how credible or factual these numbers are. I feel that I didn't need to know this.
You're like, how can I get off of this list?
Yeah, how can I not? I mean, good on you for sliding in an Israel ranking. Sliding in an Australia ranking there to break things up a little bit to make it not seem so bad. But there's no part of me and no part of this podcast that says, yes, listen, the occupants of a country are not necessarily reflective of that country's policies and militaristic tactics. However, there is nothing about this podcast that says, hi, we agree with you ideologically and we would like you to listen to us. So, in case people from Israel thinks that we might be of one mind with them, I just want to be able to say this right here at the top, and also throw this in because we're going to be talking about Misfits and Magic later on in this, which is parody of Harry Potter and J.K. Rowling. So I just want to be able to say this like right at the top here, really succinctly: Free Palestine, fuck Zionists, fuck J.K. Rowling, fuck TERFs. Just so there's
Mhm.
no misunderstanding going forward about this.
Absolutely.
Receiving that email was a buzzkill of the highest variety. I just didn't need or want to know this information. Like, I understand on paper, I already know we are not a quote unquote like successful podcast. I don't need information more than that. I'm fine with that. I've come to terms with that reality of this podcast.
We just do it for the fun.
Yeah, we just do this for the fun. I mean, more than that would be great. Success in Israel is not wanted.
Yeah, no.
So I just want to say that right at the top here. Let's talk about some news. Continuing in upsetting things that I don't want to happen. Elon Musk may or may not buy Hasbro. Elon Musk shooted off a series of tweets over the last few weeks, declaring his intent to buy Hasbro at some point, similar to how he bought Twitter back in 2022, which went flawless and seamless, and nothing bad happened after that. And so here's what would happen if Elon Musk buys Twitter. And I'm mentioning this mainly because we talk about Dimension 20 a lot on this podcast. But there's two big sides of Hasbro. There's the toy side, which is like Transformers, GI Joe, stuff like that. And then there's the TTRPG side of Dungeons and Dragons, Magic the Gathering, stuff like that. And Dungeons and Dragons is like the big one here. That is, a lot of people think, is Elon Musk's like main motivation for buying Hasbro or for wanting to buy Hasbro. And we all know what Elon Musk's politics and what his general mindset is. It would be bad. It would be bad. Yeah, if he were to buy Hasbro, it would not look good, especially for D&D. Now, how this could affect something like Dimension 20 going forward is probably minimal because Dimension 20 has already kind of a little bit been going away from like classic D&D.
Mhm.
Um, Especially in the last year, they have been developing and like really working their own homebrew system of Kids on Brooms, which is the system they're using in Misfits and Magic, which like I said, we'll be talking about that later on in the episode. But really homebrewing and doing that system so that they don't necessarily have to do D&D rules, which I think they already saw some of that blood in the water already. Um, even aside from Elon Musk, if he buys Hasbro, um, they just put out new rules in 2024, just for 2024 rules, back in September or October, and there are big rumors that like the next rules that they do after that would be written by AI, and that's like a big rumor going forward. So like even separate from Elon Musk, there's
Mhm.
pretty good reason to kind of divest. But it would be pretty nasty still. And Elon Musk is at his core an idiot and doesn't know how anything works, um, and loves nothing more than to put a ratchet in any system that otherwise works perfectly well. So that is fairly worrying, and especially like Hasbro owns a lot of like other, as I said, like a lot of other like toy based stuff. So who knows how that affects anything going forward. The main thing I would say though is if you like D&D, maybe try to learn a different system. If you like D&D and you play D&D, maybe see how Pathfinder is. I don't know. Going with the mindset of it's okay, he probably won't do it, historically doesn't have a great track record. Because people said the same thing in 2022, where like, oh, Elon Musk wants to buy Twitter. Well, he probably won't, and then he did. So don't be left with no alternative. That's what I'd say. You don't want to be at the point where, oh, Elon Musk bought our favorite thing and ruined it, and now we don't have any favorite thing anymore. Which again is not something that I think like shows like Dimension 20 or Critical Role or any of those shows I think are in danger of, because they have found to uh, be able to you know improvise and do new systems and new whatever. But everyone else, yeah, maybe pay attention to what develops out of this because it can be bad. Quick show note, just to remind everyone, we'll have one more regular episode next week, and then the week after we are doing our top 10 shows.
So get your New Year's resolutions for TV figured out, Drew.
Oh, I don't even know.
Well, get with the program. Come on.
I know. I don't even know what I want my 2025 viewing to look like, Because the
Mm,
whole thing of that is like, looking at like what you watch and being like, okay, what are my deficits? Like, what am I not
yeah.
paying attention to? And I've kind of done a lot of that over the last few years, so I don't know what my New Year's resolution for 2025 will be. Got really sit down and see like what my blind spots are, because it is like I do think it's also like the marriage of like I'm not watching this enough, and also it is easy to watch that thing. You know,
Right.
like I could say I'm not watching enough Korean or Thai or Chinese shows, but it's like, okay, how accessible are those to watch in the states?
Mm-hmm.
How easy is that going to be to do for a New Year's resolution? So I have to like really, I have to sit down and really think about what I want to do about that. I'm open, I'm considering lots of things. Let's move on into the goat. So the goat is a weekly segment we do where myself and Mads nominate a best TV character or episode and pit them against each other on a poll on Tumblr, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Once again, Blue Sky, I beg of you, a poll, please. My firstborn for a poll. This week, we are doing, in honor of Star Wars Skeleton Crew coming out, our favorite child or child adjacent show. Which, as I kind of broke this down and looked at like what my options were,
Mm-hmm.
I was like, oh, I'm in trouble. I was like, oh, this category sucks. Actually, this is not good.
Yeah, like I personally had like a list of characters that I knew I wanted to highlight. And from those characters, I was like, okay, I can choose an episode or whatever. And I said to myself, they can't be over the age of like 12, right? Because I was like, then we get into the teen dramas, and we don't need to get into the teen dramas like
Right. That
that,
was that was the
whatever.
problem I had. That was the problem I had. Of
Yeah.
how do you define a child, right? And like how much of the show does the child need to have been a child,
That's completely valid.
right?
I mean, like,
Like
I didn't choose this, but like I sat there and I thought, I was like, ooh, I could totally probably do Harrison from Dexter because like it was like a big deal on the show. It was a big turning point in the show, him being born, whatever. And then when they did the like spin-off series, he was a teenager. But then I was like, I don't really want to dive into that. The Harrison era was not the best era of Dexter. So I was like, whatever. But that was something that I had to think about as well. I was like, okay, how involved in the plot do I want to, like, which child do I want to pick based on how involved they are in the plot? Um, because, there are adult centered shows that do have children in them, that the children do have an impact on characters. But I was like, I don't. It did take a lot of thinking. Like I had to think over this entire week to come up with my pick. So
Mhm. Yeah.
curious to see what you came up with because you're like, oh, I'm screwed.
It wasn't great. I will say, um, this is perhaps the biggest swing I've ever taken.
All right.
In the almost 2 years of doing the goat on this podcast, this I think is the biggest swing I've taken. And with that, I will actually go first here. So the pick I'm about to make, I need to emphasize here, is such a swing, only because I have not watched this show, but I feel that it has to be mentioned.
Oh,
I
interesting.
A case has to be made for it, even if I haven't necessarily seen it personally. Um, so I did a lot of research. I did, went looking through episodes, and I picked what I kind of saw. A lot of people say was like one of the best episodes. So I feel good about this. And also, if you disagree, I don't know, go yell it. My pick for this week comes from Bluey, which
Oh,
everyone,
interesting.
every parent, and every child knows at this point. Um, and that is Bluey season 1, episode 43. That's right, I said 43. Entitled "Camping," which is Bluey. So the show follows Bluey family of anthropomorphized dogs in, I think it's New Zealand. It's either New Zealand or Australia, and I know that mistaking the two is borderline a hate crime. But I genuinely cannot remember. But it follows his family. Bluey is one of the children, along with sibling and her two
They're both
parents,
girls.
both parents. Yes, thank you. I'm working on a limited base knowledge. I have to be a voice of the people, Mads. And for this episode, it centers around a camping holiday where it's essentially exactly what it sounds like. They go out camping, and while there, Bluey makes a new friend, a uh, young boy who only speaks French. Bluey, of course, only speaks English, and throughout the course of the episode, they find ways of communicating with each other. Developing a kind of common language, and spending the course of the 2 or 3 days at this campground, playing and planting seeds and hunting for a wild pig that Bluey's dad pretends to be for essentially the entire episode. It has been said many times, Bluey's best dad ever. And then the episode kind of crescendos um, with Bluey discovering that her French friend John Luke, his family has packed up from the campground and has left to go home, which leads to this really nice conversation between Bluey and her mom, talking about there are special people that come into your life and come out of your life, and you have these really nice memories. You've probably heard this scene on TikTok or something. Like you've probably
Mm.
heard this out of context, but it's this really touching moment. And then the episode ends with many years later, a teenage Bluey sitting underneath the tree of one of the seeds that they planted, and sees a younger John Luke there, and it ends like that. But it's just this really nice and touching episode. And like from what I understand, Bluey's episodes are that they are these like really nice microcosms of growing up and emotion, and a lot of like what I think you and I enjoyed a lot from like Adventure Time. But that is my pick. Bluey season 1, episode 43, entitled Camping.
Awesome. I was curious when you said you're like, I'm gonna shoot. This is a really big swing. I was like, what could they possibly be talking about? Yep, Bluey. I've
Yeah,
only seen like maybe one episode of Bluey. It's cute.
yeah. That's what.
Uh,
Just for the record, if I had watched the show, it wouldn't be a big swing at all. But it's merely the fact that I have never, not once.
um. All right. Well, so for my pick, taking it back to the '80s, to the days of Full House. And originally, I thought I was just going to focus specifically on Stephanie Tanner because she's my favorite kid from that show. I think she has the most interesting things happen to her, with her, things like that. But then I was like, no, I'm going to pick my favorite Stephanie centered episode, which is Full House season 2, episode 1, Cutting It Close. And in this episode, it's the premiere of season 2. And Stephanie's like 7, 8 years old. She's wanting to play beauty parlor, and she's been doing Joey's hair, you know, not anything dangerous. She's just put his hair in curlers and, whatever. But then she goes to Jesse, who's in his room practicing his guitar, and he's in the middle of performing, and she turns off his amp, which starts him off on a bad foot to begin with, because you don't mess with him when he's doing his music. And she's like, let's play beauty parlor. He's like, let's not. And she gets kind of upset a little bit, but then he always turns around and changes his mind. And he does this time, only instead of doing fake scissors like she'd been doing with Joey, she had real scissors, and she accidentally cuts his mullet off. Um, and up to this point, Jesse's identifying thing was his hair. It meant a lot to him. So this was like an identity crisis for him. And unfortunately, he turns right to Stephanie and he screams at her, I can't believe you did that. He's very upset with her. And we see Danny trying to smooth things over, DJ yelling at Stephanie that how could you do that? And it's just a lot of Stephanie getting blamed overly harshly for something that a 7 or 8 year old is doing, right? And we see her just kind of disappear, and a little while later Danny comes up to her room and finds her there, and she's very forlorn and sad, and she looks at her toys and she goes, goodbye toys, I don't even deserve to play with you. Like she's basically saying like she's a really bad kid, she's done something really really terrible, and so she just shoves her toys into the toy box and closes the lid, right? And she sits on top of the toy box, and Danny asks her, well, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm punishing myself, I'm grounding myself till I'm 80 years old. And he's like, why? And she goes, because I ruined Uncle Jesse's life, I cut his hair and I didn't mean to. And Uncle Jesse has to go to the hairdresser to get it fixed because she just cut a chunk. She didn't cut all of it, right? She's not an actual hairdresser. He come on his way back. He's so upset that he had to go to the hairdresser that he gets into a motorcycle crash, which causes him to have to get cast put on both of his arms, And so like he can't really function properly. And when he gets home, Stephanie tries to give him a hug to make him feel better, and she grabs his arm, which makes him cry out in pain. And so she just, the poor girl is just like making mistakes left and right, and Jesse's not being the cool, awesome uncle that he's always been, right? He's not being helpful in this moment. She's having a crisis of her own. And, you know, it takes Danny talking to Jesse. He's like, Jesse, it's just hair. He goes, no, Danny, your hair is just hair. Mine is a statement. And he's like, yeah, and she's just a child. Like, and that's when Jesse kind of like has his aha moment, and he's like, oh crap, like you're right. She's just a kid, and I'm making her feel like crap. And so he goes out and he does his little uncle stuff and convinces her that she didn't do anything wrong, that she's not a horrible person. And, as all half-hour sitcoms in those days did, it wrapped up nicely in a sweet little bow by the end of the episode. But it was definitely a turning point for both Jesse and Stephanie. Stephanie stopped being such, I mean, she's still going to be a little bit bratty because she's 8 years old and she's going to do things that are going to annoy people. But she was a little more cognizant of her actions after that. And it was just one of those episodes that I always think about with her because it was so heartbreaking to see her joy just get squashed so quickly by one simple little mistake. Um, but yeah, that was my pick for this week. Full House season 2, episode 1, Cutting It Close.
Nice. You can vote for both of these on Tumblr, Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And you'll have 2 days to vote once it goes live. And be sure to like and share it on all your social platforms. Next week, in honor of Christmas and it being our last real episode of the year, we will be talking about our best Christmas episode. Keep an eye out for that. Good stuff. Without anything else, let's move on into the main part of our show. So, to kick us off this week, we're talking about Dimension 20, Season 10. We're jumping around a little bit this time with Misfits and Magic, Episode 1, entitled The Chosen Ones. Um, so, Mads, some pretty big changes this season. First, we have a different DM and an
And I
entirely.
like her.
She's so good.
She's so fun. Like, so, so fun.
Yeah, Abria. So Abria Iyengar is kind of what I consider, along with like Erika Ishii, as like
Mm-hmm.
unofficial intrepid heroes,
Yeah.
because both of them have done so many Dimension 20 seasons. And Abria, I think Abria has DM'd 3 or 4 seasons at this point of Dimension 20.
Mm-hmm.
And she, has also done like a lot of work with Critical Role, and is very active in a bunch of like D&D spaces. And even more than that, she has been in a bunch of other Dimension 20 campaigns as a player. So she's just so good at this.
Yeah, and from the beginning, like, I kind of was like, oh, I think I'm gonna like this person because like she's explaining the way they're setting up this game because it's gonna be different than other D&D campaigns. Like they're using a different set of like different set of like scoring and move calculation and things like that. And she's like sitting there explaining it, and she's like, all right, got it, good, okay. And Erika Aish, how do you say her last name?
Uh, Ishii.
Ishii. Erika Ishii is like, I'm not gonna. She's like, I remember that, and then it's gonna go right back out of my brain. And she's like, well, we like questions here. You can ask questions. It's like the clear familiarity between her and Erika that like shows me, okay, this is gonna be fun. There's gonna be some good interactions between the players and the DM. I am sat. I'm here for it.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think I think Erica and Abria did. Okay, no, it was right after this. Never mind. But yeah, Abria immediately comes into this and is just fits it so well.
Hmm.
What you talked about is a great example of what Abria does, and also has absolutely no patience for Brendan Lee Mulligan.
Mm.
Like right at the start here, and it's just so good. Abria gives Brendan a lot of like "fuck you" energy, that I think is really delightful. But yeah, what do you think about this new game system?
I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, it's still confusing me a little bit, but it seems fun and it seems to fit, things fairly well. It's still as unpredictable as anything because you've still got to have the roles, right? I do like that Abria multiple times throughout this episode. Abria's like, with a difficulty of X. And she's like, that seems right. That seems logical. That seems doable. And it's like, it's like, there is no rhyme or reason for the number that she's giving out. And I love it. Like, it's so arbitrary and I love it.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think. Oh, I can't remember exactly what Brendan said, but there was something Brendan said in the recent episode of Misfits and Magic season 2, which just wrapped up, where he was like, Abria has this wonderful thing of like, yeah, you can do anything, whatever you want. The world's your oyster, and also here's the hammer of consequences.
There was one point in this episode where like Brennan got a really good role and she had said at the start of the episode that like if you hit your difficulty or go, if you hit your difficulty, that's great. It'll be a normal action, blah blah whatever. If it's below it, you're going to have severe consequences, but if it's super above it, you might get some really great things out of that. So he got like a really great role and he like just starts to mouth off about what he's doing and she's like, yeah, sure, okay, I'll let you do it this time because you got such a good role. Like it was very much Brennan's gonna do what he wanted to do, and she was like, I didn't say that was okay before you started saying you're doing this, but okay, fine.
Yeah, yeah,
Brennan needs to get like I feel like Brennan in this episode seems like he struggles every once in a while with, oh right, I'm not the DM. I can't just like do what I want. I have to like follow the DM. And I think that moment specifically was very much him either choosing to ignore that or forgetting. Like I'm gonna go with he forgot. Like he's just like, oh yeah, whatever.
right, right. Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. So Misfits and Magic, I think, was the first time that Dimension 20 got like considerable pushback from other people. Aside just from, hey, we're doing a parody of Harry Potter and a time where, hey, that might not be entirely kosher. But it was
Hmm.
in the form of Brennan is the only white person. He's the only white male person at the table. And he ended up taking a lot of space when you have like a black man, two black women, and an Asian person at the table.
Hmm.
I say that also just to, like put a spotlight on it here, but also it is fun to see like the ways in which you can already see Brennan like kind of bumping up. Like it's kind of like I don't know, kind of like one of those wind up toys,
Hmm.
where like mo- I think Brennan most of the time is only able to be like halfway wound up, and now it's just like fully. He's just like, let's fucking go, baby,
Right.
because he gets to DM so often and rarely gets to just be a player. But God, Evan Kelp is just such that all being said, I love Evan Kelp so much.
But that freaking name.
That
What are
fucking
you
name.
doing, Brennan? Brennan, why is there an M in that name? I was like, how dare you? This does
Yeah.
not make sense. I'm gonna punch you in the face right now.
Part of what makes that name, part of what makes Evan Kelp so great, is how pleased with himself Brennan looks at how viscerally unpleasant it is to hear that name. Like, it's just wrong. You hear that name, you're like, that's no. No.
Automatic no.
Automatic no. But like, I do think really does service the character that Brennan's playing, because Evan is just such a he's just the saddest boy who's ever lived. He's just I love Evan so much, but
Hmm.
I think the way Brennan described it is it's that kind of like Voldemort archetype where it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we have a child, and the child can do great and terrible and dark things. Except here it's like, no, I just want to be normal so badly.
He's like, can I go to a medic and have them just take it out? And and Abrea's like, take what out? She's like, what? He goes, the magic. Like, I don't want it. She's like, wait, everyone who has magic wants it. And he goes, I don't. Like, it was, I don't know. As much as I love Brennan, I'm very, very unsettled by Evan. And I realize that that's probably the point,
Yes.
but it drives me nuts. It makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I don't know what it is specifically that I'm like, can we not have this character? Like, and it's not just the name. There's just so
No,
much about Evan that I'm just like, go away.
there's so much unsettling about Evan, as this character who has never had a fun day.
Dude, when he gets his owl that gives him his letter, and he's like, oh, there's this form that needs to be filled out by my guardian. What if I don't have one of those? Do I need to fill it out and get some random adult to sign it? And the owl is just like, no, it's not necessary. And I'm just like, okay, that was very sad and depressing.
It's very sad and depressing. Brennan created Evan as like, what if I created just the most depressing young person I ever like possibly could?
Meanwhile, I said this pre-recording. This campaign has made me bite the bullet and make the decision that Lou Wilson is my favorite player of all time.
He's just fantastic.
He was so good, and in this in this campaign especially, I've never laughed more. Like, he's made me laugh so much in this first episode that I'm just like, I adore Lou. Like, Lou is just great.
Yeah, and that's part of like what we talked about with like the Unsleeping City,
Hmm.
where Lou is playing a character who is unambiguously
Black.
black. Yeah, just no two ways about it. It's not Fabian Seacaster, who you could see him as black, but he's so written as a white character. He's
Hmm.
so coded as a white character. Fabian is here. It's just like, no, it is there, like just explicitly black.
And going back to what you said about people criticizing this season with how Brennan takes up so much space being the one white person at the table. Um there's the moment towards when they first get to this new world in new version of London or whatever. Um the whole Harry Potter thing. Um where the whole conversation about you can't say muggle. Um,
Right.
which I know it's probably more of a licensing thing than it is that it's a slur. But like that itself, with the fact that Lou is the one that like insists on continuing to say it, that Whitney says it, whatever.
Mhm.
And it's like that is a very inherently black related experience that is being played out here. And we have to hold respect for that. We have to hold space for that and respect that Lou is making a very conscious decision to be like, I'm a black character, and this is me being very implicit about the fact that I'm black because I can say muggle. He's like, me and my muggles.
But I also love how immediately the like non-racist slur becomes a slur. Like how immediately Namp is like, no, I don't like that at all.
That is a slur. And to that effect, it kind of, to me, kind of felt like a white person coming in and telling people of color how they should identify themselves. And it's like, and the people of color are like, fuck you, I'm gonna say what I want.
Yeah, yeah.
I did not know going into this that it would be very socially conscious. Like, I was just like, oh, there's a lot of social commentary going on in this campaign.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah. Uh, yeah. And I really enjoyed. A part of the point of the season is just like, isn't Harry Potter fucking stupid? Like,
It's and it's funny because like I spent so much of my life thinking Harry Potter was one of the greatest things I'd ever read, and like clear up to probably like 25, 26, and I'm like watching this and I'm like, if I had watched this 10 years ago, I would have been like, oh my god, how dare they make fun of this, Harry Potter's so great. But now I'm like, no, you're hitting all the notes of why this series is not as great as everyone thinks it is. um Thank you. Like,
yeah. No, there was something Brennan said in another podcast where he was talking about Harry Potter, and he was like, if you're this like advanced magical society and your main form of communication is nature's slowest animal,
not
nature's slowest bird, that's animal cruelty.
only that, like if you think about it, like from the standpoint of the Harry Potter world, right? So I think about this a lot actually. In the fifth book, Harry has to send letters in secret to his godfather who's in hiding thousands of miles away. And he's having to use out. I'm like, sir, you are an asshole. Like that poor fucking bird. Like, what? Just also the whole commentary on, as a kid, I thought it was kind of cool that like Muggle technology didn't work at Hogwarts. That was kind of cool. Like you couldn't have phones and like internet and things like that. It like distracted you. Like I was like, oh, that makes sense. Like it'll distract you. Blah 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 blah. But like, no, if you're an advanced society, why don't you have any technology to prove it?
Right, right. No, I love the joke of like, that's an aesthetic choice that you made.
Also, can we just talk about the fact that Evan has a phone that does not have a screen on it?
God, like that just in itself is like, that's it.
But like,
It shouldn't be as sad as it is. Like,
it's
but
funny because it feels like Evan is an amalgamation of both Voldemort and Harry into one character.
mhm,
Because they were both very sad and depressing orphans
yes,
that didn't have money or things. And it's like, this is very much feeling like, what if Harry had gone dark side?
right, right.
Or had a darkness in him that he really, really was aware of. Because Harry doesn't become aware of the potential for darkness until like the end of the series, which I, we're not going to dive into the stupidness of this book series. But I do appreciate also that they went on a whole tangent about Sundays from McDonald's. I was like, also, it made even funnier by the fact that 9 times out of 10, you go to McDonald's and the ice cream machines are not working anyway, so you can't even get a sundae from
Mhm.
McDonald's.
I also I really love Erika Ishii's character Dream, who is just
You mean
such,
Karen?
yeah, Karen Dream, who is just such a send up of like a very particular era of like Tumblr girl.
Yes, she's very, on the inside she's very cutesy and whatever, but really she wants to appear to be dark and mysterious and dangerous.
Right. It's such like another twist on like the figure off faith kind of character.
Yeah.
Like I am very dark and mysterious. Um,
I just kept laughing so much when her wand turned bright pink and sparkly, and I was just like,
oh, and her familiar
and
being
her familiar is a chipmunk,
just
or
just
what is that
very
right?
yeah,
Is it a
just
chipmunk?
yes, like this
Yes.
very like proper British chipmunk. Oh, he's very cute. I
And she's
love
like
the
all upset, and Evan's like, "No, this could be good. It can talk to you, and you can understand it." And I'm like, "You're not wrong, Evan." And Whitney's familiar as his basketball. Like, I was dying.
that's so good. Yeah, yeah. And then of course, Sam.
Sam being an influencer is such an enjoyable trait.
It's so
Um,
good.
because it influences so much of how she approaches the magical world. She's very much like, "Oh, I need to record this. I need to like have my followers know about this." Like, and she can't because the technology doesn't work. And it's just like, "Oh, Sam." But then she gets the really cute pig familiar and I'm like, "Oh, that's adorable.
God,
Very cute."
every time like the I'm gonna pick my favorite movie, Terminator 2. Oh
Terminator
God,
2.
that gets me.
And wait, and I love that Dream named their chipmunk Theodore. And then, like, and it gets to be Evan's turn, and she's like, and um Brea's like, "You need to roll to find out, like, what's gonna happen with regards to familiars." And Brennan rolls a 1, and so he's like, "Oh fuck." Like, you knew it was gonna be bad news from that moment.
Mhm.
And then Abrea's like, "So Sam, what's gonna happen to Evan?" Like, leaving the fate of Evan in the hands of one of his patriots. Like,
It's so funny. It's so good. Yeah, and it's something we've talked a lot about with like other seasons of like the role determining what happens so perfectly. You know,
yeah,
because a bridge,
because it works for the story so well.
yeah, like
Because
A Bria just saying like, oh, and Brennan, your shadow interacts with all these other animals really badly is like that's a good thing on the face of it, but like Brennan just rolling it so badly takes it to another level, just like so tragically bad. Like it's really funny.
such I'm already very obsessed with these characters, and I'm curious to see where this goes. It's clear that some of the other students are going to look down upon them because it's clear that it was broadcast news that these are these are um transfer students,
Mhm.
which I love that Dream was like, "Oh, do you have like a copy of that news story? Because I want it. I was in the news. I want a copy of that."
Yes, yeah.
Also, good touch, Erica, on wearing the blood choker because
Oh,
it looks so cool.
it's so good. More on Misfits and Magic at a later date. Let's move on to our next show, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, which is now streaming on Disney Plus. The first 2 episodes are out. So, Matt, what did you think about this?
I'm actually enjoying myself. I unlike you, I watch quite a few programming with children characters. um
This
and
feels
so
like
like
a misrepresentation on me.
I enjoyed the dynamic. I'm officially obsessed with Neil. Neil is my favorite character, but I like that it feels fresh and new, right? Like, we've had so much Star Wars over the years that, like, it's hard for me to feel like something is fresh and new, but I did feel like this was really fresh and new, and I think it's because it's from the viewpoint of these children, two of whom I cannot talk, two of whom are very optimistic and very much believe in the Jedi and believe that they can be Jedi, and there's just a serial optimism to that that adds to the dynamic of the show. And then you've got the two girls who are just they're just out here to have fun. They just don't give a crap about school. They don't give a crap about being good students. They just want to see the world and go on an adventure until they're stuck in an adventure and then they realize they just want to go home. And I don't know, I greatly enjoyed these first two episodes.
I think Skeleton Crew is a perfectly fine show. Here's the problem I have with it. It's not really even a problem with it. It is just that I would enjoy the show more if it existed in a world, and I mean our world, where I didn't already see Star Trek Prodigy, which I think is a better executed version of this.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
So that's that's not Skeleton Crew's fault, but
No.
I am not able to separate that. But even with that, I think it's a perfectly fine show. It's Star Wars' take on a very like Amblin, or like Amblin meets like Treasure Planet, or Treasure Island kind of plot. Um, I don't think it's doing a lot for me outside of like the genre tropes. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I acknowledge that it is cribbing from them pretty strongly, and it's trying to draw a lot from them and kind of evoke a tone. But if you're gonna say like, well, this is different because it's Star Wars and it's we're putting our spin on this as for this franchise, okay, but I need a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So it's by no means bad. I think it's just a little bit more flavorless that I think I would like. And it's kind of hard to be like, oh, this is a thing. 'Cause I think the tone of this is so strongly like kid friendly, when Star Wars is
Yeah.
already a kid friendly property. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so it's like it's kind of like you know putting vanilla icing on a vanilla cake. We've got the vanilla. It's fine.
I don't know. I'm just purely enjoying it. And so, like, yes, critically, if you look at like some of these elements, they don't quite fit for all audiences, but I'm having a good time. So I'm going to like overlook the vanilla-ness of it because I'm having a good time, right? Fern is a very badass character, and I wish I'd had her kind of guts as a kid. Like, what do you mean you're gonna go up against a bunch of pirates and be like, "I can kick your asses"? Like this girl is like, I I can't. That being said, I just looked up the cast because I was like, I couldn't remember Fern's name, so I like had to look it up. And I'm like looking at the actor they have playing the voice of Neil, because obviously Neil is a CGI'd um elephant child looking thing. Um and I was like, why does that actor look familiar? I just watched the new Jack Black Christmas movie and he was in that. So I was like, oh, that's why I recognize him. He played a kid that had dyslexia, and so he wrote a letter to Santa, but it said "Dear Satan" instead, and Jack Black came to him as Satan. So Satan posing as Santa. But anyways, it was a dumb movie. It wasn't that great, but beside the point. The addition of Jude Law, I knew it was coming, obviously, because it was the worst kept secret ever. Everyone knew Jude Law was going to be in this, so him showing up in the prison was not that surprising. I am a decent fan of Jude Law. Like, I like his stuff here and there. I'm curious to see where this goes, because we've only had like a few minutes with him, but he does have the ability to work the Force, which makes Wim say, "Oh my God, are you a Jedi?" And he puts his finger to his lips. So I don't know if that's him confirming or him just being like, "Stop saying that word," because this is a world where the word Jedi is bad news. It's like,
Let's move on to our next show. Creature Commandos, which is now streaming on Max. And this is a animated show out of the DC camp being run by James Gunn. And is a spin-off of sorts of Suicide Squad, or the Suicide Squad. And picks up a lot of threads from that movie and Peacemaker, which James Gunn also. But I don't think you necessarily need to have watched either of those to get what Creature Commandos is doing. And so the entire conceit of Creature Commandos is the government has disallowed the use of criminals to be used in these suicide squads. So instead, Amanda Waller is using monsters in these teams, or non-humans. And so we have a kind of motley crew of like the Bride of Frankenstein and a GI robot from World War II that just really wants to kill Nazis. Uh,
I mean, I don't blame him.
yeah, and Weasel from Suicide Squad, and a man who burns radioactively, and kind of fish humanoid woman. And so the main plot of this is Cersei, who is a kind of big bad of Wonder Woman, has assembled essentially a far right group of incels to invade Themyscira one day, and um, has invaded this fictional country, like Eastern European kind of vibe of a country. And this team has been sent in to take care of it. That part of it's very stupid, but just stupid enough. Yeah, I think this is a lot of fun. It's I'm interested to see like where this all will take us for this first season. I think there are some fun vocal performances here. Indira Varma voices the Bride of Frankenstein. Sean Gunn voices GI Robot, and Sean Gunn has a lot of like very funny, like I just want to kill Nazis lines. That's really good. So yeah, I'm interested in this. The animation is a little wonkier than I think I would have liked, but it has a kind of frenetic, nasty pace that I think um, doesn't entirely work against it. So I will be checking back in on this. I'm sure. So, but so far I'm enjoying it. Let's move on to our next show, Silo, season 2, episode 4, entitled "The Harmonium." So we actually didn't check in on episode 3, so let's talk about that really briefly. And we can kind of talk about this in the same breath, probably. What are we thinking about these 2 episodes?
Um, Let me just say that Steve Zahn is perfect casting to play a crazy man who's been locked in a capsule by himself for many years.
God, yes. Like when it was just like his eyes in the vault, I wasn't really like placing him. But as soon as he ran out, and
Yeah.
we saw Solo, I was like, oh my God, Steve Zahn is here.
So, oddly enough, I recognized him the minute he spoke, and I was like, "That's Steve Zahn's voice." I was like, or am I crazy? Like, I thought I was wrong at first because I was like, "That really sounds like Steve Zahn," and then he came out, and I was like, "It was Steve Zahn. I
Yeah,
am correct." Like, I felt very validated. And I was like, "You could not have cast a better person to play a very kooky man who doesn't know how to exist with other humans anymore because he's been by himself for so long.
Mhm.
He's very much a doomsday kind of actor, and he fits in perfectly. And I love his dynamic with Juliet. Solo and Juliet work very well together, and it makes their side of the story a bit more compelling than it probably would have been if it had been somebody else playing Solo, because they do have really good scene chemistry together. It makes it very believable that he is still filled with anxiety, right? Like, he does agree to help her, but then in the middle of helping her, he freaks out and goes back to the vault, right? So it's a very interesting dynamic, very believable. I'm enjoying it. I am enjoying Juliet outside of the setting of the silo that she grew up in with everyone that she knows, her having to like rely on herself to get through each day. I think that's an interesting twist on the narrative.
The interactions between Solo and Juliet, I think, really exemplifies like something I like a lot about Silo. Not necessarily verbalizing something that the audience already knows, and just letting like that you know it, and the show knows that you know it.
Right.
Of Juliet, like the show knows that we know Solo was a child when this went down and was tasked with becoming the Vault Keeper.
Yep.
And the show lets us know that Juliet knows without ever having to actually say that she knows,
Mm.
which I really like. Just like the little unspoken things I really enjoy about Silo.
And then we juxtapose that with the chaos that is currently reigning in the old silo, is what I've started calling it, because that's just, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And it's very interesting to see. Juliet's terrified that if she doesn't get back to her silo, the same thing that happened in Solo's silo is going to happen in their silo. And we're seeing in real time that that is exactly what's happening, right? People are starting to question whether or not the outside is bad because they're like, well, Juliet didn't clean and Juliet didn't die. She went over the hill. So they're starting to revolt a bit more, right? And it's a very, very interesting storytelling aspect of Juliet having this fear and the viewers getting to see it come to fruition, even though Juliet has no idea whether or not it's really happening or not. And I like that.
Right. And it's like this interesting commentary on like human nature is so deeply ingrained that when presented with a situation, we can only respond in one way. If you kept people locked in a silo for hundreds of years and then you said, hey, it's actually okay to go outside, there's only one way for this to go out. Or if you
Right.
even imply that it's okay to go outside, there's only one conclusion that can happen.
And the character, I forget her name, but the one that's the shadow of the head of IT, um, or he used to be head of IT, now he's, all powerful ruler. That dickwad. Anyways, I don't know why there are like certain character names that I cannot remember for this show, but she even says something to that effect when she's speaking to um, one of one of the officials. She says humans were never meant to be kept underground for hundreds of years. So like, in a way, like you said, Silo is very good at like not speaking those things out loud that we know, but also knowing when to speak those things out loud because they do help the narrative of the story. And her saying that out loud gives us an insight into where her thought process is with how everything is currently sitting, where she feels they should be going. And then we see her again giving her opinion to head douchebag, that's what I call him, head douchebag, about how he should release the kid that they arrested down in Mechanical because he's doing it out of revenge about Juliet and that's not worth it. She's like, you should release him. And it's that whole dichotomy of she's clearly wanting to do what's best in the best interest of the people, whereas he just wants power. And it's never been more clear than in episode 4, because we see him telling her, "Oh, I need your opinion. I love to talk to you. I appreciate everything that you do for me, blah 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 blah," only to murder her.
Right.
And it's like, do you really though then? Or are you just setting her up to be thrown off by you poisoning the mushrooms?
Right. I think the lines are a little murkier. Like he is a character who does like the power. Who likes the I don't even know if he likes the power. I think he likes the control.
Yes.
And I think the power is kind of secondary. But I don't even know that I'd say that he doesn't care about the silo people. Because we do know that he ultimately he is right. You know, we know that people can't leave the silo.
Right. I
You
just
know,
feel like he doesn't do enough to keep the peace, so to speak. Like, I feel like he he doesn't really listen to the people of the silo in a way that's productive to the continuation of their society. And so that's why I really just don't like him. I do think that, like you said, like, the control and the power outweigh his desire to care about the actual people that he is in charge of.
yeah, and he's like this different version of a character that we've seen done a lot of times, who is like the deeply religious man.
Hmm.
Except the religion in this case is, a kind of law. This pact that he keeps coming back to. The pact that has to stringently be obeyed, like has to be followed. And, the weird kind of faith in not a higher power, but like a kind of preordained path.
Hmm.
That I think is really interesting. Yeah, and like even with the judge, she had a kind of more morally ambiguous direction in like these two episodes. I really liked that scene of her talking to the man that helped Juliet last season,
Hmm.
as she's about to send him to the mines, and just the show letting everything slow down and talk to him for 2 minutes about you know astronomy and our place in the universe, and the way our planet the way the you know the solar system works, just for this little moment of not even so much hope, but just wonderment and beauty. And then the show has to kick back on and he's sitting down. It's just this really nice moment, and kind of being shown the brutality of that. Yeah, it is this the tragedy of um, the fact that he is able to work out stars and planets, just from a glance of pre-recorded videotape of stars.
Hmm.
Um, that makes him so dangerous, and that is what ultimately gets him sent down to the mines. If he had answered a different way of hey, what are those things up in the sky you see? He probably would be okay. But it becomes a thing of he is a character too smart for his own good. So now he's probably going to die.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, and the death of the judge did, you know what, Silo, you got me.
Yeah, whew. That one hit. And I think it's because we have that scene of her watching the tapes and crying and being very emotional about the way life used to be. And so I felt like I was even more emotionally connected to her, and then we turn around and she gets killed, and you're just like, holy crap, they really got us with this
Hmm.
one.
Yep. Yep. What and I think it's goes back to what I was saying of like the show basically did everything without telling us that like these that the mayor and the judge had like this big history together where they were basically in love with each other, and we expected the judge to be exempt from like any kind of violence from him
Yeah.
because of that, which made it all the more shocking.
Yeah, because I truly I not that I believe the mayor very often, but I actually believed him when he was, taking her measurements and talking to her and saying, telling her all these things about how he really relies on her and trusts her and, you know, um appreciates her candor. I cannot talk, Jesus. And then to turn around and like poison her food, and it's like, what? I, I thought you weren't going to do anything.
Right, that's the thing. I think that if things had gone a different way, he might have actually made the suit for her. But
Yeah.
I think things went a direction that even like he didn't see coming. Thought that he didn't have any other choice but to kill her at this point. So like
Right.
I don't even think this was like his, plan B or anything. You know, this was like plan D of like, oh shit, things have like really gone off the rails already.
Right, because she was verbalizing that, she felt that he had something to do with what happened down in mechanical and all these things. And he's like, I can't let her speak those things to other people. I have to make sure she stays silent. What is the only choice for that? Death.
Right. Well, like there was that, and there was the impeachment, and the mechanical coming up to have a meeting, and I think all of that just converged onto she has to die. Yeah, I forgot how good the show is.
Yeah, it's so well done. And I still haven't read the book series that it's based off of. And so, like, I actually am glad that I haven't read the book series because I'm like, I don't expect anything. I'm
Right.
going into it just here for the story.
Let's continue on to our next show. Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 5, Episode 8, titled Upper Decks. But yeah, this is a very fun a one-off that like it
Yeah.
entirely breaks the conceit of the show. Um, but yeah, just being able to spend time with like the bridge crew in this way, like at the very end, I think is very
Yeah,
very
and
enjoyable.
we got to see a few of the characters that don't get to be seen very often, and which is nice considering the show's ending in a few weeks.
Yeah, it was a very delightful episode. Yeah, and I really enjoyed the way like all the plot lines converge on each other with the
The
insectoid
I was
creatures.
the thing I was trying to think of, I was like, the lower deckers were carving pumpkins. That's what it was.
Oh, they were kind of
Which was very odd because I'm like, we're not really in the pumpkin carving season, but okay, if that's what we're doing. But then the focus went completely away from them, so I kind of was just like, okay,
it does actually make me wonder if this season was supposed to come out earlier
maybe.
and it just got delayed. Uh,
Or with it being Star Trek, who knows what time of year it really is on that show?
that's true.
Because it changes from episode to episode because they travel through space. So
Yep.
who are we to judge that they're carving pumpkins? I
uh,
just I can't believe this show is ending.
uh, yep. Two more episodes of Lower Decks. Well, let's continue on to our next show. Matlock, season 1, episode 7, entitled "Belly of the Beast." And the thing that I enjoyed about this episode is how much, like it didn't diverge from an ending that sucks. You know?
Oh yeah. I was gonna say my favorite thing about this episode was that we got a ton of Sarah and Billy, um, which is always nice because we don't get nearly enough of them. Um, Otherwise, I kind of felt like some of the other stuff was a bit out of character. If I feel a little bit for Maddie, but also like some of the stuff just feels rushed still, and that's something I've kind of had with Matlock overall. Is that like I feel like some of the stuff isn't earned. And one of those big glaring unearned issues with this episode is Senior's presence. Um
Yeah.
he's not, if they're wanting us to care about Senior, he should have been more present this whole time instead of just randomly showing up now and being like, I'm going to kick my son out of the game. Like it's like why? I'm so confused here. And I'm still not seeing this reputation that everyone is in the office says about Julian. I'm still not seeing it. And I'm like, is there something we're missing here? Because I'm just not seeing it. But I did appreciate, like you said, that at the end of the day, these big pharma bros were very shitty to this girl and offered her not nearly enough for what she went through,
Mm-hmm.
and used the laziest of loopholes to get away with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really enjoy, in the kind of perverse sense, like the commitment to like a bittersweet ending, and
Mm-hmm.
bittersweet conclusion to plots. Um, that being said, I did not care for what happened with Billy and his fiance, or his
Oh, I
girlfriend.
didn't care for that part.
Yeah, like it's fine if you want to do that, and that's, that is a realistic portrayal of a long term relationship, but you gotta do more than that, my guys.
Right, because
Like,
we haven't even really built up, we don't know anything about her.
no,
And then all of a sudden, all we know is what Billy has said. And so it just felt very weird that she's going to reject him outright. But when I said I really greatly enjoyed that we got Sarah and Billy, I meant I liked seeing Sarah's growth materialize in, especially like, as much as I didn't like the Billy rejection part, I enjoyed that she was there to comfort him,
yeah.
because that's not something Sarah from episode 1 would have done.
Well, and even just like, Sarah's main plot in this episode being, I don't want this girl that I'm dating to know that I sing and
That I'm a singer.
yeah, and might think that's weird. Like, that's not a Sarah season episode 1 behavior either. You know,
No, it's cute, and I love that she's
it's really cute.
in love with this girl, and so she, she ends up being able to be convinced to do the singing thing, and the girl ends up kissing her for it, and I was like, go Sarah, yay, you
Yeah,
get your
no,
little love story.
yeah, no. Like, Piper Curtis look during the acapella song of like, oh, I am into this. Very good. And I really enjoyed Yale Grobless being back as Shay, who's just really good. Just has
I
terrific
like that she
energy.
was back. I just am disappointed that the only use they had for her was for her to be like, well, I know that Sarah's lying about the singing. And I'm like, is that really what we're using her for? Because there's so many other things that she could be helpful with at this point in the story.
Yeah, yeah. I just enjoy the show being like, yeah, she still exists and she is going to be here.
You know that she's going to end up being the problem with Maddie. Like, eventually it's going to come to a head because she's still there. They're pointing out that she's still there, right? And yeah, the other thing that really pissed me off was at the end when Julian admits that he had an affair before they like started divorce proceedings or whatever. And then like Olympia gets upset and I'm like, "Bitch, you have been having an affair for months now. What do you mean you're upset at him? Like you did the
Right.
same thing."
Yeah. But and also it is entirely unnecessary. It is an
Right.
unneeded wrinkle
Right.
to their relationship.
It's just yeah, again, some of these things don't feel earned. That is one of them. The other one is again, it comes down to Senior and Julian, and it's like, why? We need a little more backstory on these two characters because we're supposed to feel compelled or like slightly shocked by some of the things that's happening in this episode, and yet to me it just falls very flat.
Yeah.
Especially the scene at the bar where Senior says to Julian, he was wrong when he said you're nothing like me, and it's like, okay, where's the information to back that up? Like, why are we supposed to care that you're saying this?
Right.
Because at this point I'm gonna say, yeah, Julian's nothing like you, because I don't even believe this reputation that he has of being kind of a ruthless asshole in the courtroom. Like, I still don't believe it because I've yet to see it. Also, it doesn't help that Jason Ritter is just a charm ball. Like, there's nothing to me about Jason Ritter that makes me think that I should be worried about him.
Right.
In the sense of him being an antagonist. Like, I am not worried about you at all. Maybe that's the whole point. Like, they're making him seem very hapless and charming, but really he's not. I don't know. I'm very curious to see where this is going.
Yeah, no, that's definitely my thing.
And once again, the husband and the grandson, they don't know what to do with them.
They were just like, what if they
So
just
they send
weren't
them on a
here?
Christmas vacation without her. Oh god.
Yep. 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 Because they clearly could just not get those two actors this week. Which was also the thing I was thinking about in relation to uh, Billy's girlfriend. Did you all have something better planned for her, but she just couldn't be in any more episodes?
Mhm.
And
Because
you
I
all,
think this is the first time we've actually officially seen her, right?
I think we've seen her one other time.
Okay.
We saw her one other episode, um, but it was like, could you just like not have access to that actress anymore? And you're like, all right, we need to swerve hard.
I will say I do love Sarah's running joke that his girlfriend looks just like his sisters. She's like, "You're such a people pleaser. You're dating someone that could be your sister." Like, it's kind of a twist on the "you're dating your father" or "you're dating your mother." It's "you're dating your sister."
Mm,
Or it could just be that Sarah's being a dick and she looks nothing like her sister. I'm leaning more towards Sarah just doesn't give a shit. And so she's like, "Oh, I thought that was your sister." But the fact that they keep it going is just wonderful. I love it.
yeah, yeah. Let's move on to our next show. Abbott Elementary, season 4, episode 8, titled "Winter Break."
And also episode 7 called Winter Show.
Indeed. Yeah, and this
Because it
is
was a two-parter this week.
yeah, this is a very nice two-parter to take us out of 2024 with. Even though I kind of think we could have just ended it with Winter Show, and that probably would have been a better break for Christmas. But
Well, I mean, Winter Break was the Shemetti Christmas dinner. So,
right, right. I think a lot of like what Winter Show was doing was like a better.
yeah, no, I get you. I will say the best line between these two episodes is definitely a a Barbara line where she goes, "We have to we have to have grace for people who are about to meet their maker or the other guy." Talking about Melissa's uncle who is potentially dead the entire episode.
Yes.
I like the introduction of Jacob's brother, and it really kind of like highlights that families are very different despite being raised in the same environment, because Jacob and his brother are nothing alike.
No, no. Although Jacob's brother is appropriately, like, the appropriate amount of stupid.
Yeah.
It's just like the right level.
I love that, Barbara's incessant need to be very much in control of things comes to her detriment in Winter Show. Um because she's like, you kids came up with terrible lyrics. She didn't say it like that, but that's what she's thinking. She's like, these lyrics are terrible. I'm just gonna sing my song and you guys are gonna just dance around me. It's gonna and it's like, Barbara, this is the kids show, this is not the barber show. But then she loses her voice, so the kids have to do it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Well, I did appreciate the conversation about, like,
Oh yeah, definitely.
about Christmas, and the way that it's, publicly
Mm.
celebrated. It did make me think of, like, even the thing that I'm guilty of in terms of Christmas, where I'm like, well, it's not so much, you know you know Christ in a manger kind of thing, and it's more about the feeling you evoke out of Christmas, and the kind of
Hmm.
the vibe of it, and it's like, even that is so exclusionary to, like, people who do not celebrate Christmas. Like, that is a kind of vibe that we do not get to extend to people who, you know, people of a Jewish faith, or people of the Muslim faith. And I really appreciate, like, that being a cornerstone of, like, focus here.
Yeah, because originally it was the Christmas show, and then that's when, but Barbara has that conversation with the student in her class, and she's like, actually, we need to make it more generic so that this little girl can be part of it, because Christmas isn't something her family celebrates. And this year, Hanukkah and Christmas fall on the same day, or at least the first night of Hanukkah fall on the same day. So, like, it's that gentle reminder to myself that, like, oh yeah, there are other holidays
Right.
in this winter season. Kwanzaa's the day after Christmas. Every year it starts the day after Christmas. So there's multiple belief systems that have holidays in this time period, and one of the big things that America has forgotten is that there are more than just Christian faith people in this country. Um, and I appreciate that Abbott Elementary kind of did a subtle nod to that commentary of,
Right.
we need to remember that Christianity is not the center of the world. Christian based holidays are not the center. Um,
Right.
there are plenty of children in the world that don't know anything about Christmas or Santa Claus, or that vibe, as you said.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's even just the commentary that, like, an expansion away from Christmas kind of isn't even possible, because our country is so rooted in that as a kind of vibe check. Like,
Hmm.
even just going from, like, like they do in the episode of, like, from Christmas to just winter, or just a generic holiday kind of thing, is, like, not even feasible, because so much of this time of the year has been, like, co-opted so strongly with Christmas, and that kind of just feeling that is meant to evoke.
Right. And I just, this time of year, I always am just reminded that, like, so many people get very offended if you say happy holidays to them instead of Merry Christmas. And I'm like, we're not we're not telling you can't celebrate Christmas. We're just being kind to the fact that there are more than just Christmas people hanging out around here, right? Like,
Mhm.
it's something that more people need to be more aware of, but again, it's not the vibe of America, unfortunately. And
Right.
that's very sad. And we need to work on that, but that's not our problem, really. We do what we can, but overall, our country is just not very good at being aware of other religious belief systems.
Hmm.
Like, I grew up in Kansas, and my whole life, I didn't know anything about Muslim faith. I didn't know anything about different African belief systems. I didn't know anything about Judaism. And then I moved to the East Coast, and all of a sudden I'm like, wait, kids get out of school for Jewish holidays? What is this? And I'm like, what? There's a ton of Jewish holidays. What do you mean there's more than just Hanukkah? Like, I was not aware. And so, and that's something that's very common across the United States. And I feel like we need to move away from that. But I don't know how we could do that.
Right.
And this got way off topic, and I apologize.
No, no. I also really enjoyed the cameo by Ernie Hudson at the end of that episode.
Yeah.
Just so good. There's there's a part of me that wishes that was just Ernie Hudson cutting hair.
Yeah.
Like that would have been really good. But I was like, oh, why is Ernie Hudson
It was very, wait, what?
here? Wait, what? Why is the Flame King here?
Also, I appreciate I love the gag of Melissa using up all the refrigerators in the entire school for her Christmas family dinner, and Gregory having a meltdown over the fact that he couldn't find a place for his lunch.
It's really funny.
And like, she couldn't even use her bargaining to get him out of that spiral. Like, he was just very upset with her. Whereas the other people that got upset, she was like, oh, I'll give you some cannolis, or I'll give you this. And they were like, okay, fine, whatever. Sure, sounds good. Carry on.
Yeah, these pair of episodes are delightful. Let's move on to our next show. What We Do in the Shadows, Season 6, Episode 9, entitled Come Out and Play. We actually haven't checked in on What We Do in the Shadows in a bit. Um, how are we feeling about where this last season is going?
Honestly, I feel like it's not as inspired as the other seasons. And I've seen this commentary from a lot of other fans too, is that like it feels like it's lost its spark, because what do you mean Guillermo wants really nothing to do with vampires anymore? Like, it's like it did a full 180, and now he just works in an office and occasionally helps them with things when they really need him to. I appreciate that the vampire part is still funny. It's just, I don't know, it just feels like it's not quite hitting like it has in the past. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel that way.
I think like the Guillermo stuff is in keeping with like a lot of a lot of like what they've done in the last couple seasons of like where they've taken that character. And so like this to me feels like the natural progression of that of into vampire, and now not of that world and like stepping back out. So like that works for me. Um, being a finance pro is a you know different story. Um, but I think there have been some pretty funny dividends out of that.
I will say I'm not digging or believing the Nandor being in love with what's her face.
No, no.
It's like the writers are like, we cannot let you guys continue to ship Nandor and Guillermo. We need to make it very obvious that Nandor wants nothing to do with Guillermo. Let's go like full 180 where he's not even acting like he's attracted to just about anybody anymore. Like, it's just, I'm like, what? And I do, though I will say I do appreciate that in this episode, she sits him down and she's just like, you like the chase? And then you don't give a crap. I'm not about that. Like,
Yeah.
She's like, I want to be pursued and then treated right, and that's not going to happen with you. Therefore, I'm not interested.
Mm-hmm. But I think we've had a pretty funny run of episodes lately with like Steve Coogan as Laszlo's dad. It's a ghost dad.
Oh yeah. That one was a good episode.
And then here with a Warriors riff, which is like such a deep, like such a funny deep cut.
Also, I just really appreciate this episode that it's like, they were like, we had a gathering of all the New York City vampires, and like, I thought it would just be like, there's the Staten Island, there's the Brooklyn, there's the Queens. No, they have like even more niche groupings than that, and I was like, oh, this is hilarious. Like,
yeah. I'm kind of surprised they didn't get Nick Kroll to come back for this though.
Yeah,
that would have been really good. Not really the vibe they're going for this episode, but
also I thought that the reason it was, I was like, when the monster killed why can't I think of the old roommate's name? Jerry. When the monster killed Jerry, and everyone got like angry at them. I was like, why are you angry? He was a tool bag. Like, he was awful. And then we realized that they're angry because the Baron wanted to kill him instead. And it's like, that tracks. That totally tracks.
But it was the funniest way to close out the Jerry plotline of like, no, this guy sucks. He was never going to do anything. Like, this plotline was never going to go anywhere. You all knew that. I found a lot of enjoyment out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we only have 2 more episodes of this too. Another thing we'll have to talk about in the new year.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about What We Do in the Shadows and Lower Decks ending in January, unfortunately. Because, sorry guys, we are not going to be around for that. We also will need the time to mourn the losses of these shows and then come back with fresh faces.
I shall have to salute Lower Decks as it flies away. Let's continue on to our next show. Found, Season 2, Episode 8, entitled Missing While Haunted.
And this was their winter finale, right? It was a few weeks ago.
It was.
Okay. It's been a little while. I'm like trying to refresh my memory. This is the one where they created a stream at Zeke's place for her, and then the police came in and took his servers, right?
This was the one after that.
Oh, it was the one after that. Okay.
Yeah.
Crap. Guys, I'm sorry. It's been a few weeks. They've all run together at this point.
Yeah, this is the one where the police have already confiscated all his stuff, and they want really badly to throw him in jail.
Margaret struggle to suppress memories of Jamie's disappearance triggers emotions she can't ward off. M&A work to track down a mother with mental illness who has vanished. Oh, right. I remember, because Margaret has a breakdown in this episode about, she's like, we find all these people, how come you couldn't find Jamie? Like, she's very accusatory towards her, and that's well within her right to be. She's a grieving mom. To be fair, I think the people around her have kind of let her be in this bubble of not moving on for a little too long. Mm-hmm. And it's now culminating in Margaret having to face that prospect of him never being found after years of kind of being in limbo, and it's not working well for her.
No.
I think that's an interesting narrative choice that they took. Because I was curious if they were ever going to force her to face the reality of you're not probably going to see your son ever again. And now they have.
I did like the resolution of the main case. Just someone who has schizophrenia.
Yeah.
Or like, there's not a
And she
like,
tries, but she can't fully commit to being a parent because of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I like there like not being an actual antagonist in this episode. You know,
Yeah, I agree.
like it's just her and her, brain working against her.
Which sometimes that's all it really is.
Yeah,
And I feel like this show kind of forgets that. So it was nice to see that they were like, let's give that some attention.
yeah. So I like this different version. This like different type of case. Yeah, it really gave them some nice variation here. I'm still not sure what we're doing with Sir.
Yeah, it's still very weird. It's a weird dynamic still. And I do appreciate that they keep doing the flashbacks, but I feel like at this point there's been so many of them. They feel it feels like it's bogging down the real, like, the focus of where it should, it's bogging down the story and the focus isn't where it needs to be, and I am no longer appreciating the flashbacks to Lacey and blanking on her name.
Gabby.
Lacey and main woman's name. Yeah.
Gabby.
Childhood. Gabby. Wow. I tell you, this is why I have a problem with my end of the year list, because I'm like, my brain is just like, I don't know what we're talking about. The minute I have to talk about things. Gabby and Lacey's childhood, while to an extent their trauma is important to the story, we don't need this constant breakdown of those moments, right? Like, I feel like
No.
they're overdoing the flashbacks at this point.
Yeah, I think it's a problem now of like the show thinks that it is like that the flashbacks are part of its format, and it's just not. It doesn't have to be. Like, it's not written anywhere that you have to do flashbacks every episode.
And since we haven't checked in with the show in a little while, I find it very interesting that this whole time, I think I've said this before, that like I felt like they didn't know what to do with Dawn's husband, and now him and Dawn are getting a divorce, and it's like, well,
Yep.
again, we had no idea what to do with him, so is this really that surprising? But now he's becoming more of a fixture with the team, and so I'm like kind of sad that they are supposedly getting a divorce, because it's like, are you going to get rid of this character? Because I kind of like him.
Right. I think for now they're just separated. So I don't.
Yeah.
They may or may not get a divorce.
But it's again, I feel like so many shows these days run into that problem where they're like, we want to establish that these characters have families, but then we don't know how to keep that a consistent enough plot point that it matters.
Right. Well, let's move on to our last show, 911, Season 8, Episode 8, entitled Wannabes. So, Mads, I will let you talk about this.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say about this episode except that it was very meta. It was very meta in the sense that in the previous episode, well, all season long, there's been this secondary show called Hot Shots going on in the background, which we got introduced to in the like 3-part premiere because Bobby got assigned to be their fire department liaison for the show, to like, check in on the credibility of what these firefighters on this show within a show were doing. And so it's been a kind of a like background character of its own. this whole season. And then this episode, the star of the show, Brad, is doing ride-alongs with the with the firefight with the 118, and it's not going well because in one emergency in this episode, he full on takes a woman out of the car without making sure there's a backboard on her after she's in a car accident, and it's like, sir, you could have just paralyzed this woman. Like, what are you doing? You are not a licensed firefighter. Please do not touch people at an emergency. And Bobby is very much not having it either. He's very much like, can you step back, please? Like, let us do our work, take notes, and that is all you can do. And he actually says that to him at one point, because his presence just becomes a bigger and bigger problem as they go along, right? But the episode becomes very meta when they go on an emergency where a guy is trying to kill himself and they're trying to talk him down, and he's talking about how his marriage is falling apart, and his favorite character on his favorite show is in a coma and probably gonna die, and we find out that he loves hot shots and that the character in question is Brad's character. And so they bring Brad over and they're like, Brad, you can talk this guy down because you're the guy that you need to convince him that his firefighter show is still going to be around and he needs to live for his firefighter show. See where this meta is coming in? Where they're like basically saying to the fans, like, don't worry, your firefighter show is a reason to stay alive. Like, I don't really know why that commentary was put into the episode, but it was. Maybe they're implying that they understand that a lot of these fans like really rely on 911 to get through their days. I don't know. It was just very strange and funny and comical. And overall the episode was kind of just meh, so to speak. There was the emergency with Athena was a guy was trying to be his own version of a cop by calling people out in parking lots for not putting their carts away properly, and it ends up with him getting attacked, and so Athena has to like solve the crime of like who attacked this kid. But no offense, I would have probably beat the crap out of this kid if he'd put a camera in my face and been like, you didn't put your card away. Like bro, there are bigger problems in the world. But the best part of this episode, in my opinion, because I'm a big Buddy shipper, was the final moments of the episode. Eddie this whole time has been struggling with the fact that he had a call with his son at the beginning of the episode, and his son tells him some information that he had no idea was going on in his son's life. His son has joined the chess team, and he's very upset about the fact that he didn't know this detail because his son's not telling him, his parents aren't telling him anything, and he's just kind of starting to really realize how upset he is over the fact that him and his son are very separate right now. And so he's decided he's going to move back to Texas so that he can be there for his son and kind of ingratiate himself back into his son's life, right? Well, he's made this decision. Buck comes over. He rings the doorbell, but then doesn't wait for Eddie to open the door. Eddie doesn't even know who it is. He just says, come in. So maybe Buck texted him saying he was coming over. I have no idea. Whatever. It doesn't matter. These are two boyfriends. You can't convince me otherwise. He tells him to come in. He comes in with a big basket of baked goods that have been properly wrapped with bows and cellophane, and like they look very pretty. And he's like, I'm trying not to call Tommy, so I baked more stuff. Here you go. He goes, and I wanted to make snickerdoodles, but I realized I didn't have enough stuff for snickerdoodles, so I came over because I figured you probably have this stuff for snickerdoodles. And he's like going on and on about baking, and Eddie's just standing there amused at this man. And it's, again, you guys are gay for each other. Like, just bite the bullet and kiss. It's fine. But then Buck notices that Eddie had quickly flipped over his tablet when Buck came into the kitchen. And so Buck's like, I respect your privacy, and grabs the tablet anyway and like sees that he's looking at different locations. And that's when he finds out that Eddie's planning on moving to Texas and he's going to leave. And Buck immediately jumps into, all right, I'm going to be your wingman on dealing with these realtors because I don't think you're smart enough to figure that stuff out on your own. I'm going to help you. And we got this. And so, like, Eddie, we see a image of Eddie smiling in relief because he realizes he's not alone in this moment, that he has his best friend. And then we see Buck sitting on the couch, and he has this look of realization on his face of, oh shit, Eddie's leaving. And then it like cuts to black. So it's like, we know where this is going. It's eventually gonna get there, but these two men are in love. God damn it, just let them be in love. But yeah, it was a nice winter finale. We'll see where it goes in 8B because I don't really see Eddie actually ending up in Texas, but who knows? He might. Who knows at this point?
Well, that is it for this week. Next week, as we said, is going to be our last regular episode of the year. So we'll try to fit in some catch up into that. But until then, Mads, where can we find you online?
You can find me. I'm still technically on Twitter. I just don't post very often on there anymore. At Dorothy NYC89, but you can find me all over Blue Sky at Dorothy NYC89, as well as Tumblr at MadsWorld15.
And you can follow me pretty much everywhere at Drew Koenig. And you can follow the podcast at Not on the TV Podcasts on all of your social media platforms. And email us at notonthettvpodcast@gmail.com with any thoughts, comments, questions you may have about the show. You can find previous episodes of the podcast on Apple and Spotify, along with whatever other podcasting device you use. You can find our full directory on our Libsyn feed at libsyn.com/Not on the TV Podcast. And until next week, please remember, don't go in the ocean. It's none of your business. Goodbye.